This is the Wally Show, and I'm very excited about this because we have author, speaker, podcaster, philanthropist. Try to paint this man with one brush. It cannot be done. And pickleballer,
yes,
which we are going to get to in a little bit.
Let's go.
We got Carlos Whittaker on, and we're going to talk about his book, Reconnected, which I love the concept of this book. So you rule at social media.
Well, I don't know if rule is the right term, but I enjoy it. I love telling stories.
You're good at it, though.
Thank you.
So it fuels your business, too, which, by the way, what do you do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I hate it when I'm on an airplane and someone's like, hey, so what do you do? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I do. I do what I do. This is what I think I do. I think I tell stories that lead people towards freedom in some way, shape, or form. And I can tell those stories, whether it's a book, looking at a camera on my phone, standing on a stage in front of a company, at a weekend at a church. Like, I just tell stories that hopefully lead people towards freedom in some way, shape, or form.
Because we see you travel a lot. Like, my wife follows you extensively.
Yes.
Almost stalkery.
Yeah, well, no. She's in what I call the Insta Familia.
Yeah.
The Insta Familia are my passionate Instagram followers that, I share my life with every single day. And if they followed for any number of years, they're invested.
Well,
right?
you use it for good, though, too. That's the thing that I've seen so many times. You use social media in the right way because, all of a sudden, there will be a need that comes up, and you're like, Insta Familia, let's hook it up.
Let's just go.
You've raised, hundreds of thousands, probably into the millions.
$1.2 million in Venmo donations.
Crazy.
And the average Venmo donation is $5.
No way.
Yep. So that's how. That's what I do. Yeah, there's the bat signal for like Batman, right?
Yeah.
And somebody created a animated GIF for me that is a Insta Familia bat signal. And so what I'll do is whenever I see a need, I'll just put that animated GIF up on my story, and then sure enough, people know, it's coming. Carlos is about to ask.
Yeah.
And we've helped a lot of people.
Yeah, and the thing is, you're never asking for yourself. You're always doing it on behalf of somebody else, and so that's what makes it so attractive. And
absolutely.
It's also a testament to the power of numbers.
Yeah.
Because if your average donation is $5 and you're raising $1.2 million, I'm not good at math, but that's a lot of people.
It is. It's a lot. It's rare if I don't, and I always do it in just 24-hour blitzes. So I'm like, hey, let's say, how much can we raise in 24 hours? And it's always north of $80,000 for whoever we're trying to raise money for. Sometimes when the Covenant School situation happened a couple years ago, we did in 24 hours $240,000.
Wow.
So pretty
because that was a horrible local story, a school shooting here locally, and you live locally, and that definitely lands with you.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so let's get into this, though. So, we're talking about how much social media is integrated and integral in what you do on a daily basis. So how do you take 7 weeks free from screens and go live with monks and the Amish?
Yes.
I'm fascinated by this.
Yes, 7 screen-free weeks with monks and Amish farmers. And the end of the subtitle is to recover the lost art of being human. Mm. And I think I got to the point, again, I'm a full-time social media guy, right? That's like what I do. And it was 2022, and we all get those notifications that slide across our screen on Sundays that say, you have averaged blankety blank hours and minutes a day on your screen.
So everyone gets that at the same time on Sunday.
Android users, iPhone users, Sundays are the day that it will push. I don't know if it's the same time, but we all get it.
I get it every Sunday as I'm in church.
Yes, as you're in church, and we normally just kind of swipe it away because we don't want to look at it. It's like the shame moment. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to do better next week. Well, how's that going for you?
It's not going well.
So I thought to myself, mine said 7 hours and 23 minutes a day. And I thought, well, I'm
that's
a content
my TikTok
creator.
Use in a day, man.
Yeah. I'm like, I make videos. This is my job. My accountant friends are in front of their computers that long every day. So I made an excuse. But then, Wally, I did the math. And the math is what sent me on this journey. The math, I said, okay, well, how many hours a week is this then? And that equaled 49 hours a week. So 2 entire cycles of the sun, I was looking at my phone.
That's a full-time job, too.
And I was like, what the heck? And then I kept doing the math. And that equals over 3 months a year.
Man.
3 months a year I'm spending looking at my screen. Then I kept doing the math. And this was the math that made me do it, made me do this experiment. I said, if I live to be 85 years old, how many days will I lose looking at this phone? And the math was over 11 years of my life.
Wow.
I will spend looking at a screen. And here, I'm 50. So, if you're listening to this and you're 30, double it. You could lose 20 years of your. That's not living. And there was something deep within me that was like, I have to help people. I have to help myself, and then I have to help people. So I as I do, I did a pretty extreme thing.
I love that.
And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I happen to be in a season of my life where I could do this. I spent 7.5 weeks. I never looked at an iPhone, an Apple Watch, a laptop, a TV, an iPad, not a single screen for 7.5 weeks. And in the middle, I lived with 20 Benedictine monks. Then I lived with Amish sheep farming family, and then I lived with my family at home in Nashville for a total of 7.5 weeks. Okay. Kicker is I got my brain scanned by a neuroscientist before and after.
Great idea.
So I could kind of have a bookend to see what actually happened to my brain, and then ended up writing a book about it.
Really? Yeah. Okay, without giving away too much for the book, because I want people to get the book.
Yeah.
The book is called Reconnected, Carlos Whittaker. Can you share what it showed about your brain?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I think for the first thing I'd say about this, though, is like, I think the brain results are important, but I actually didn't even have to get my brain rescanned at the end. I felt like a completely different human being. It literally felt like an elephant had stepped off my chest by day 4 of this experiment.
Okay.
And so in the first scan, it showed that my brain had, some things that could probably get better. But the kicker for me was I was in the 50th percentile of memory for men in America, men 18 to 70. I was in the 50th percentile of memory. When I got done and I went back for my brain scan and my memory tests, I was in the 99th percentile.
Really?
99th percentile for memory. So there was only 1% of men in America with better memory than me. And so it just was like proof in the pudding at that point. I was like, these smartphones are making us dumb.
Right.
And, but also, Wally, like, this book isn't why phones are bad.
Right.
There's enough talk about that. There's enough books about that. I'm not going to write that book. This really became why it's beautiful on the other side of the phone. And when I fell in love with all of these practices that we've stopped doing because we rely on our screens, and I didn't have it, right? And so when I fell back in love with all of these things, which are really the chapters in the book, oh my gosh, my screen time now, I haven't implemented one single rule in my life following. It's not like, okay, now I've got screen time for 4 hours and I'm going to lock my phone. No. I just started doing all the things that I fell back in love with during those 7 weeks, and I'm now at 3.5 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
So I've literally gained more than half of the life I was losing back because I implemented these things that I fell back in love with.
The memory thing is fascinating to me because I've felt my mind getting worse and worse. Like things that I used to be able to remember, it was quicker on, it's foggier. And I thought I was starting to slide into old age or dementia. I mean, I might be making myself dumber by looking at TikTok for hours.
Oh no, absolutely. Like we weren't, our souls and our psyche were not created with the capacity to consume the amount of content we consume. I realized really quickly that when I had, like, when I was at the monastery the first few days, 23 hours a day silence. So I was having panic attacks, heart palpitations, night sweats. And I was coming off of the drug.
I was going to say, that's almost like you're describing detox.
I was detoxing. My serotonin levels were balancing out. My dopamine levels were balancing out. But what I thought was I was coming off the drug of the phone. I realized the phone isn't the drug. The phone is the needle. The needle that is delivering the drug into our system. And the drug that we're mostly addicted to is knowledge, which leads to control.
Yeah.
And these phones give us a false sense of control. And when I didn't have it, I was panicked. I didn't know what to do. But suddenly I started falling in love with not being in control, with wondering. Like,
okay, Simon Sinek, you know who he is, right?
Yeah.
They have a rule about not having phones in meetings because it takes away wonder.
Yes.
Because kids just look for answers. It's nice to be able to have knowledge and you go, hey, what's the square root of something? You can look it right up.
Yep.
But when you have to think and wonder, it's so much better.
Yes, wondering is almost extinct. Because when we were growing up, right, in the 90s or whatever, like if we had a question about something, if you're doing radio and it's like someone has a question, you couldn't just look it up.
No.
You just had to wonder.
Yeah.
And wondering is a uniquely human experience that we no longer do because Google's the wonder killer. And so I know, I'd walk out of my high desert, little cottage at the top of the monastery, and it was hot. And I'd always reach for my phone to see how hot it was.
Yeah.
But guess what? It was just hot.
I'm just going to wonder.
I didn't know if it was 97, if it was 92. And I realized, well, I guess I don't need to know. I feel it, and I know it's hot. And so, like, all of these things that I fell back in love with, wondering, noticing, savoring, getting lost and finding our way, are things that I do now that have allowed me to reclaim my life.
Okay, now you talk about you spent time with the monks and Amish farmers and your family. Which was the most challenging? Like, which was the hardest group of people to be with? And I probably wouldn't say your family.
No, definitely not. I'm not going to say my family. By the time I got to my family, I was like broken from my phone habit. So like I was literally living my best life.
They just got the benefit.
They got the benefit. Right. They got the last 3 weeks. The monks, I would say the monks was going to be the hardest, but it was the most formational, only because I went from 1,000 miles an hour living to 3 miles an hour living.
Yes.
I went from, all of this content consumption to zero. So to have that drastic of a moment happen, it was shocking to my system. It was shocking to my faith, shocking to a lot of things. Suddenly, when you don't have, when you don't have the Wally show, you don't have these podcasts, when you don't have all of these things that can encourage you all day long and give you answers to, life questions, and you're just stuck with you.
Yeah.
And your thoughts.
And your horrible company.
Yeah.
Like
it's just like, whoa, I couldn't get out of my own head.
Yeah.
So the monks was really hard, but I would say formationally, the monks was the best for me because all of those things. The Amish was hard because it was just hard work.
Yes.
Like I went from living in a cave with the monks to living in downtown Manhattan at Mount Hope, Ohio. It was a 4-way stop, tiny little Amish community, but they go hard.
Yeah.
They visit, every meal is 2 hours long. They're talking nonstop. We're out with the sheep. We're out, in the fields. And so like, it was exhausting physically for me, but I learned a lot about what we've lost, what we've been disconnected from in community with the Amish, right? And so like that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, that's interesting that one is personal and one is social.
Yes, exactly.
And the personal part of it, did you find yourself where you don't have anyone to talk to? Did you find yourself talking to yourself out loud?
Listen, so here was the only thing is I took a Sony camera with me. Okay, so I didn't take any screens,
right?
But I took a camera because I wanted to document myself every night. So I set it on a tripod. And I would talk to, the camera. And I was, this is what I did today. So then when I wrote the book, I'd have fresh memory.
Right.
Well, the more I did it, the more this little camera became like, have you ever seen Castaway?
Wilson.
Yes.
Every night he's like, Wilson.
Yeah. So like this little Sony became my Wilson, and I'm like talking to it every night, literally like it's a friend, Yeah. And so I mean, I ended up especially at the monastery because I was so alone, so silent, and in such solitude. By the second week, I got to know some of the monks, and I'd have some more conversations with the monks. But it was pretty much all solitude all the time.
Is that the reason that they do solitude, is that you find your introspection and you're supposed to find, well, for monks, it's different than, because I'm assuming Buddhist monks.
Sure, These are Benedictine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. These are Benedictine monks. And so, they take 3 vows to obedience, stability, and fidelity. And those are kind of the vows that they live by. And that stability piece is, gosh, what I fell in love with. They lived such a stable existence. They really don't struggle with anxiety or depression there. Yeah. Why? Because they're not consuming all of these things that make them worry, but also they pray 5 times a day. Yeah. They have breakfast and dinner in silence. They can speak during lunch. And there's just a stability to them that I found was really healing, for me. And so, I think with the monks, they were, and the reason why they do this, that live the way they do, is the reason why so many of us are stressed out. We have no stability. We think we have stability, we don't. We think we have control, we don't. And these phones give us a false sense of stability and a false sense of control, but we're really not. We check our kids with Life 360. My mom told me maybe 2 years ago, she's like, I'm so glad I didn't have Life 360 when you were a teenager. Yeah. Because you think it's giving you peace, but it's actually creating more worry in you than you need. When you left and you were 16 and you were driving away and I was like, be home by 9? Yeah. I just had to trust that you'd be home by 9. Yeah. And if you were home by 9, then I'd start to worry. But I wasn't able to see how fast you were going, if you brake too hard, she's like, it's just too much. Like, we know too much. And so, I was able to really find peace.
Now, after spending time with the monks and with the Amish farmers, did you actually, sure, you got a different perspective on technology, but did you learn any skills? Like, can you do kung fu or raise a barn?
Listen, yes. I definitely, one skill I've got now is I can be alone in solitude for a long period of time, right? Up until solitude is almost extinct in our society, up until the car radio was introduced, Every single time you traveled alone from point A to point B, you had solitude. We now are the first generation walking the face of this earth to no longer have the ability to have solitude.
You just got the greatest gift, though, and you didn't even realize it because your wife's like, well, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
I can live
that's
here.
fine. Yeah, that's it. Totally. So I gained the skill, because it is a skill of noticing and savoring in solitude.
Yeah.
But then with the Amish, bro, if a sheep were to walk in the front door of Way FM right now, I could stick that sheep's head between my legs and shear that thing in 3 minutes flat.
I love it.
Like, I got new life skills I never thought I'd have.
I love it. See, if the social media thing ever stops working, you're going to be sheep shearing.
I'm going to be sheep shearing.
That is
it.
awesome. What do you think is the biggest blessing, like in your career so far that you've been doing? You've gotten to help a lot of people, and people look at what you've done, but is there something that's really landed with you that you're like, man, I'm glad I got to be a part of that?
Yeah, I really feel like this last season, with my last book before this one called How to Human, I just have seen so many people learn how to walk with people that don't look like them, think like them, believe like them, all the things like them. And that's what I think is missing right now. Right at the point of this recording, right? People say we're the most divided we've ever been. I am so grateful to be and living and being able to share in a season where I can tell people, actually, we're not more divided than we've ever been.
Okay, so you don't feel that.
We may feel it, but what's the truth? Go to the Nashville Public Library and walk down the history aisle. Pick up any book. Right. Open it up. Well, you will learn very quickly we're not beheading each other. We're not more divided than we've ever been.
Well, because the narrative is that we are, and that's what gets pushed on.
Well, that's what's but here's the difference. The difference is we feel like we're more divided because we have more access to other people's thoughts than we've ever had before, which leads back to this book. When I reduced my screen time, I suddenly didn't feel as divided with my friends. I don't need to know who all my friends are voting for. I don't need to know their opinions on all of these. I don't need to. We weren't created with the capacity to consume and to know all of those things. And you wonder why people are feeling so divided. Well, it's because we're swimming in this rage ecosystem called X, Facebook, all these things on a daily basis. And I'm still on all those things, but I limit it to this. How I get my news now, I don't feel like the division feels a lot less because I subscribed to the Tennessean.
Oh, do you really?
Every morning, I walk out in my front yard and I pick up a newspaper and I read a newspaper that when I'm done with it, there's no more news to read. And in 20 minutes, I've deleted all the news apps off my phone. If anything else happens on planet Earth, I'll find out tomorrow morning.
That's fascinating.
And so I just think, what are ways we can? And these are, I know this isn't necessarily what you asked, but these are things that I'm so enjoying helping people reconnect with, because there's no greater need, I think, right now for us to disconnect from the chaos and reconnect with who God's created us to be.
When they deliver your newspaper, they're like, Carlos, here it comes. Here's your newspaper. You're our single subscriber.
What's funny is I was like, I couldn't believe that they actually had an actual, because a lot of newspapers aren't even around anymore. They've gone virtual. And when I found out that I could get the Tennessean delivered to, I'm like, in my head, I'm just thinking of like all the 80s, like when I was a kid, like I actually had friends that were newspaper delivery guys. Like they get on their bicycles or in their Trans Ams, throw it out the way. And so like, I still don't know who is throwing this newspaper in my front yard because I'm not up early enough.
That's funny.
But in my head, I'm hoping it's some guy named Buzz in a Trans Am. That's just throwing it out there.
You mentioned like we're not as disconnected as we seem when you look at history and how violence and things like that, for sure. But there's people always ask me too. You're like, man, our world is so bad, and are we living in the end times? And people get really hung up on that. Yeah. And I don't get hung up on that, and B, I don't know, because I'm like, God destroyed the world and cities a few times. Yep. I'm figuring that was pretty bad, and He hasn't done that yet. So maybe we're not as bad as we think we are.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great way to look at it. And again, I want people to know it's not that it's not bad. It's not that we're not living in division. It's not that we're not. Sure. We just know more than I think we're supposed to know. And I just think that the Lord has a way of setting things right, of recorrecting things. And, it may come to pass. But we also know in Scripture, it tells us no one knows the time or the place.
Right.
And so, like, Who knows if we're living in the end times? I mean, they probably thought they were living in the end times, and
that was my point.
You know, a lot like in 200, AD. Like who knows? Yeah. And so. You're right. Like, let's not fixate on those things, but let's fixate on, how can we reconnect in these times?
Yeah, and if you think we are living in the end times, all the more reason to tell people about God, and Jesus. That's why I love Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you ever seen that clip of him on YouTube from years ago? A guy gave him a Bible after he's a staunch atheist.
Yeah.
Guy gave him a Bible after a thing, and he said, man, it made a difference with me. Now, it didn't change the way I believe, but he was a good man. He cared about me. He's like, how much do you have to hate someone if you believe in heaven and hell to not tell them about it?
Exactly.
And you're like, wow, from an atheist, like he nailed that perfectly,
Absolutely.
So good. Now, I'm curious, you come back to your family, and you're joining them fresh off of being reconnected, after you were disconnected. So then, do you have rules for your kids? As a parent, you've got kids, and do you have social media rules that you employ? I mean,
of course, my kids are a little older now, but when they were younger, I definitely did. But what I found was when I got home, when I got back from my experiment, and I spent those 3 weeks with my family, I was not on my screen at all. 0, right? My family's screen time went down 50%.
Wow, because you weren't. Now, were they doing it in solidarity or just not mimicking what you were doing?
They just weren't. My kids were like, well, Dad, if you're talking to us and you don't even have a phone in front of you, like we didn't want to have ours out. And it lessened the amount of screen time.
That's really cool, man.
Isn't that cool?
That's awesome. So now, so you finished this experiment. Are you better for it?
Yes.
And did you have a moment where you found yourself sliding back into your old habits?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'm at 3.5 hours now. I snuck back up to 5, and so these things aren't, again, I don't have all of these rules in place, like setting my screen time up, but some of the things that have helped me is I bought an alarm clock and I no longer plug in my phone next to my bed.
Oh,
right?
really?
So now I've got an alarm clock that wakes me up. So what has that done? That took a whole hour of screen time off my day because I would spend 30 minutes before I went to sleep scrolling, 30 minutes in the morning when I wake up scrolling. Well, now that I've got an alarm clock and my phone's plugged in the living room, I no longer am scrolling. So that's a whole hour that I got back. And so I started to implement these things. I no longer use GPS, crazy as it sounds. I look up the direction before I leave.
Old school.
And I write it on a piece of paper. And then I drive. And if I happen to be stuck in traffic for 15 minutes, guess what? Then maybe I'm supposed to be stuck in traffic and moving a lot slower than I think. We're so we're looking for efficiency all the time. But when I was with the Amish and he, Farmer Willis was like, hey, I need you to go to the feed store and pick up this part. So hop on the e-bike or whatever. I would get lost.
Yeah.
I literally would he'd tell me and then I'd get lost and I was like, I'd have to ask for directions and I'd meet somebody new. And it was incredible. And I was like, I think we were actually created to get lost and find our way, and we no longer do that.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that because I remember when you used to print out the directions, you had a map in your car.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how you got there, and now you don't even know where you're going. You plug it in, and you just let this thing tell you how to get there.
Yep, totally.
I do want to talk a little bit with you outside of the book, Reconnected by Carlos Whittaker. Your dad, he's been obviously a central figure, a hero in your life, and you're very open about the difficulties he's facing with dementia. For people who might not know this, because my wife super follows you and she keeps me up on what you're doing. Yeah. Where's he at right now?
He's in late stage dementia.
Okay.
And so the beautiful thing is my mom and dad live across the street from me. And so I'm able to check on him every day. I'm able to be with my mom. All of these incredible moments are being made, even in the late stage. And here's the other thing, and I share about this a lot on social media. Nobody talks about this stuff. And we're all going to have to go through it with our parents in some way, shape, or form, or family member. And so I just happen to be a guy that's decided to share about it, talk about it. And ultimately, I feel like these last days and weeks and months and years, however long it's going to be with my dad, being able to share the grief and the glory that kind of coincide has been really healing for me.
Yeah, it's one of the cruelest diseases, honestly, as you watch someone fade away and they're still there and healthy. Yeah. And that, I think, would be hard. My dad got really sick and I watched his health go.
Yes.
And that was super hard, but it's kind of more understandable, than this. And so, inside of the difficulty with this, Have you seen any good that you're like, you know what, I'm not thankful for this because I don't buy that when people go, I'm so thankful.
No.
You know, I think that's kind of making lemons out of lemonade, you know, or making lemonade out of lemons. But like, is there anything good that you're like, okay, this was a good byproduct at least? I don't love it, but.
My parents live across the street. Like, I never would have moved my mom and dad in across the street had this not happened. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I'm getting to spend time I never would have spent with them.
Yeah.
And so, there's that, and also, just being able to help my mom. And there's a closeness with my mom and dad that I haven't had in a long time. And who knows if I would have had it had this not happened.
I had a friend of mine whose mom had it, and her dad was still living in the house. And she would freak out because this stranger was in her home, and so they're trying to figure out what to do. Do we move him out or whatever? Yeah. And his dad just came up with this new thing. Was like, you know what? I'm gonna court her like she doesn't recognize me, and I'm gonna date this woman. Yeah. And he started from scratch with her, and at least they had this interesting twist of a love story a second time around, and she's unaware of it. Yeah. But totally. How beautiful in the midst of the bad.
And one of the things I laugh at a lot is my dad. He it's like he knows who I am. He knows who my mom is, but he doesn't know us. Yeah. And because he'll ask me, what's your name? But every single day I see him looking at my mom, like almost like, whoa, who is this beautiful woman?
Dad, you're married.
Yeah, totally. And I'm like, and sometimes he'll look at me and he goes, who is that?
That's funny.
And I was like, that's your wife. And he's like, what? And he gets so happy.
That's cool.
And so it's like, you've seen again, I have to laugh at these things or I'll cry, but there's that movie 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies.
Where literally that's the life that my mom and dad are living. And so thank God we're in this. He's not, scared. He's not angry. Yeah. He's actually gotten a lot kinder and happier, and just kind of more loving.
Well, there you go, man. Yeah. I appreciate you taking the time to be on the show with us here on the old podcast. But Carlos Whittaker, the book is Reconnected. Yeah. Definitely worth checking out, and definitely follow him. How do people follow you? You're not already doing it?
Instagram @LosWhit is where I'm at. You're going to get half of what you used to get from me because I'm barely on my phone anymore, but you'll still get a lot. And if people want to, again, read my books, carloswhittaker.com. I've got a documentary coming out based on this book. So lots of good stuff is coming.
Well, there you go. Carlos, thanks for being on, man.
Hey, thanks for being here.